Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Estate Law Explained, where we unpack key legal concepts to help you better understand the world of real estate law. I'm Mike Keller, a real estate litigation attorney based here in Dallas, Texas, and today we're going to be diving into a topic that comes up often in litigation, which is our primary area of practice. Today, we're going to be looking at what's the difference between a jury trial versus a bench trial. Most people are familiar with jury trials from TV and movies, and so it's important to have a good understanding of what the difference between these two concepts really is. Trials are a big part of the legal process, and whether the case is heard by a jury or by a judge can have a significant impact on how your case develops and ultimately the outcome of that case. So let's break this down into simple terms that everyone can understand. So first, I want to talk about what is a jury trial. In a jury trial, the case is ultimately decided by a group of citizens, a group of your peers, as people often say. And these citizens or peers are selected during a process called jury selection. Another term that you'll hear for this process is voir dire. In Texas, we call this process voir dire because it's Texas and we do everything differently. Now, in this process, jury selection, the jury listens to evidence which is ultimately presented to them by the attorneys, and they weigh the evidence, the facts in the case, and they make their determination about what really happened in this case. And when they apply their determination of the facts, ultimately that becomes the verdict in the case. So let's talk about the roles of the judge as the applier of the law and the jury as the fact finder in a jury trial. So in a jury trial, the judge is the individual who's going to oversee the trial. They're going to make determinations on evidence about what's coming into evidence and what's being kept out of evidence. Also, the judge plays an important role in providing instructions to the jury in a jury trial. So the judge is going to be the one that's going to tell the jury about what the law says and how to apply the law to the facts that are in question. Now, the jury comes in as the determiner of the facts in a jury trial. And so they are going to be applying the facts that are presented by the attorneys to the law that was explained to them by the judge in the case. So, what are the pros or the benefits of a jury trial versus a bench trial? Well, the most obvious benefit is we're getting a judgment of your peers. So we're having an opportunity to have your case judged not by one individual, but by a group of people from your community who hopefully understand you on a level perhaps more than a judge would. Another factor which is a benefit to having a jury trial is fairness. Because we don't have a situation where we have one person deciding the case, it can be perceived as having a higher element of fairness when we have multiple people and multiple perspectives deciding the case. And then finally, there is an element of transparency in the deliberation process. Although the jury's deliberations are ultimately kept to the jury and are not open to either the parties or to the public, there is that element of transparency that happens when you have a group of people discussing the facts of the case. So there are obviously cons to a jury trial, and some of those are the time. So with the time, this is probably the biggest con of a jury trial. A jury trial, as compared to a bench trial, can be substantially longer, both in terms of the preparation that's necessary to get us to trial, as well as actually trying the case itself. Another con can be the complexity, and that's kind of related to the time element. It's substantially more complex in preparing a case for trial and actually trying the case to a jury rather than presenting the case to a judge. And the final con to a jury trial is something which can ultimately be a benefit as well, is the emotional influence. So juries have a tendency to be swayed by their emotions and by their gut and their feeling of the case rather than the law. And so it's important to understand that depending on the case that you're presented with, can be both a pro and a con. So let's jump into bench trials now. And so bench trials, as we touched on briefly, are different than jury trials, of course, because they're being decided not by a judge, or excuse me, not by a jury, but by a judge. And so why do we have bench trials, and what are happening with bench trials? Well, in a bench trial, we have the judge, who is not only the one who determines the application of the law, but they are also the one who is filling the role of being the fact finder, like the jury was in the jury trial. And so this is beneficial because we have the expertise of a judge. A judge is of course, a lawyer who is trained in the law. They may or may not have experience with your particular case, the subject matter of your case, but they are going to have experience with the law itself. Another thing that is a benefit in a jury trial is efficiency. So, as compared to the jury trial, when we were talking about how that can be more complicated in terms of preparation and presentation of that case, it's much, much more efficient to present a case for a number of different reasons to the bench or to the judge rather than to a jury. And then the final element is predictability. So, in certain instances, oftentimes in real estate litigation, we have a better idea of what the outcome will be in front of a judge. And this is for a number of reasons, but it ties back to the element that we were mentioning just a moment ago, the emotional aspect in a jury being kind of a wild card, which can play in your effect or in your favor or not in your favor, depending on the case. Whereas that element tends to be removed in a bench trial. You know which type of trial is right for your case. In many cases, you don't get to choose, and that's because either party has an opportunity to select a jury trial. So, in some instances, you may get forced with a jury trial if the other side elects to choose a jury trial over a bench trial, and vice versa. Assuming that you have an opportunity to pick one over the other, there's a number of factors that we want to consider. The first factor is the complexity of the case. If your case involves highly technical issues like intricate real estate matters, for example, construction defects or contracts, a bench trial may be the better option, as we're going to have a judge that, again, is more experienced in the legal nuances that are going to be applicable to your case. The second factor to consider is the emotional appeal. As we've discussed, if your case has strong emotional elements, which occasionally real estate matters do, it's important that we consider the possibility of putting this case in front of a jury, as that part of it may resonate more with a jury than it would with a judge, which is ultimately something that will be beneficial for your case. The third factor is the cost and time. Again, as we've touched on, bench trials can be very quick as opposed to a jury trial, and thus more cost effective for you as a client in presenting your case to the ultimate fact finder. So if this is a priority for you, bench trial is probably going to be the way that we're going to want to go. The final factor, which is important to consider, is the likelihood of bias. In some cases, you may feel that a jury would be less biased, or on the flip side, that a judge could be more impartial. So also an important factor to consider in determining which option we're going to choose. As is true with most things relating to your case, it's important to discuss these factors with your attorney, as the best choice is going to depend on the specific facts of your case. So, understanding the differences between a jury trial and a bench trial is critical when you're involved in a legal dispute. The types of trial can have an impact on everything from the time that it takes to resolve your case to the outcome of the case itself. For real estate litigation specifically, this decision can be particularly important as cases often involve technical details like zoning laws, contracts, property valuations, things that may be better suited to a judge's expertise. On the other hand, cases involving disputes between neighbors or something that might be more emotionally charged, these situations could benefit from a jury's perspective. To wrap up, both jury trials and bench trials have their advantages and disadvantages. The right choice is going to depend on the specifics of your case. If you're navigating a real estate dispute or other legal matter and want to learn more about those options that are available to you, feel free to reach out to us with your questions or explore our resources. Thank you for joining me today for Real Estate Law Explained. If you found this discussion helpful, we would appreciate if you would like this post, share it with others, or drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode where we'll explore more real estate topics. And until then, stay informed and take care.